Fawn's head into the Hello Kitty stuffed animal.
Well, they cleaned her skull too, yeah?
Yeah, they boiled all the skin and muscle off.
Removed, yeah, okay.
So the police, thinking that this sounded super crazy, were trying to dismiss it, but had decided to check it out anyway. By that time, they had moved out of the apartment, but they still had the Hello Kitty doll with her skull in it. When she had told them that they had sewn it in there, that was obviously the identifier. So when they opened it and they found the skull, then they started investigating. They looked...
Yeah, I mean, when you find the skull of a human being inside of a stuffed animal,
yeah.
you know, you get a lot of questions that you need to have answered.
So they went looking for the remainder of her body. Obviously couldn't find that much, except for on a canopy of a shop below. It had her heart, lungs, liver, and intestines super badly decomposing inside of a bag that was just thrown out the window. And those were the only pieces that were remaining of her.
Because she's fucking garbage, right? She's trash. So let's just right out the window.
Like he said, flush it down the toilet. Not her. Flush it.
I am infuriated.
You're not going to be happier at the end of this.
How could this get worse? What?
So they go to court, and their defense consistently is saying that because she was seen picking things up off of the ground, they think it may have been meth and she may have intentionally overdosed to kill herself. And obviously the prosecution is saying, hey, look, she clearly, I mean, if she did, it was because she's been being tortured for so long. So we don't think that's it. Plus, this girl said that she saw this, 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 and this, and all of those are consistent with her dying from extreme trauma to her body. Because the jury wasn't able to decide whether or not it was suicide or it was murder.
Don't fucking do it.
The three men were convicted for...
Yep. I don't think I've ever been this angry at a story that you've told me before.
You're not going to be happier in a second either.
Well, I have a feeling about where it's going.
They got charged for false imprisonment for not allowing her a rightful burial and for manslaughter.
For manslaughter?
For manslaughter. One of the triad, our best friend, Mr. Chan, said, it never occurred to us that it would turn out like this. He also said that oftentimes he was taking care of her and caring for her welfare, and that the only reason he hit her was because she was stealing drugs. I read something that said that one of them was already out, but I couldn't find anything to back it up.
Was it 7 years later?
No, it wasn't 7 years, surprisingly.
When did they get out?
They get out next year. They get out in 2020 if they receive parole. So they are technically life imprisonment.
Which we know means nothing.
Right. But next year they might be out on parole. That's the first year. And like I said, supposedly someone's already out now.
Do you think that they could get it, though?
Mm-hmm.
Who would let them out?
I don't know, but also, like, I mean, they couldn't prove that they murdered her. And I know. I didn't do it. I was not the person that did it.
They just had a Hello Kitty mermaid with her skull purposefully sewed into it.
Right. The 13-year-old had been granted immunity because she's the one that helped to convict.
I have mixed feelings, okay.
I have mixed feelings about it too, but I'm happy that she did. The reason that she went to the police to begin with is because she thought that Fawn was haunting her. And she would often have dreams of her asking for her head.
I hope that she was, and I hope that she still is. Except I don't, because I would like her to move on and be happy in the afterlife.
Here's a little bit of paranormal for you. Before the building was torn down, in 2012, someone had bought it because people were saying it was haunted and no one would move there. And anyone that was living there was moving out and no one would stay. So an investor bought it and knocked it down. Before then, they would find ghostly candles. They would find little shrines. But it's also been said that some investigative reporters had gone there and done seances and had gotten interviews with Miss Vaughn. I haven't found a ton of verification for that. A woman was at the arraignment. She is crazy town into Hello Kitty. She was wearing almost all Sanrio products, especially Hello Kitty, obviously.
Yeah.
There's a couple different things, and I just want to quote these for you. There's no smile on Hello Kitty, so, quote, those who encounter the character can be happy or sad together with Hello Kitty, because she's just there to empathize. They didn't want play to be stunted by giving a requirement of a feeling to the character.
Oh, that's a real thing? That was the intention?
Yeah.
I didn't know that.
Yeah, that's why she doesn't have a mouth. Because she's not there to smile. She's there to be Hello Kitty and be whatever you need her to be.
But she has eyes.
Yeah, but they're little black dots.
Yeah, they are.
Somebody had actually asked this woman, you must be angry with what they had done to the Hello Kitty mermaid. She said, no, anything can happen to Hello Kitty. That's the point. In fact, that's what the mermaid's all about. Cat head, fish body. It's crazy and upside down. Everything, even crazy stuff, makes sense to Hello Kitty.
I'm not into it.
Does Hello Kitty hate the people who killed Mop? Once again, it's Fan. She's referenced in 2 different names sometimes. Mm-hmm. Oh no, Hello Kitty doesn't hate anybody. She never tells you off. The reporter says, quote...
Okay, but she's also a fictional character.
Right. Quote, Hello Kitty, the perfect icon for an amoral age. I guess. I'm not into Hello Kitty. She's not my favorite thing in the world.
That quote there, that did not make me feel good. That made me feel unsettled.
I'm sorry.
I will forever never want to see a Hello Kitty mermaid, and if I do, I will probably now run in the opposite direction.
Yeah, that's no. I told you it was rough.
It was. It was fascinating, though. I just wasn't aware that there was a Hello Kitty murder.
Yeah.
Okay, so after that story, mid-show cheers, shot of whiskey.
As always, you can cheers with anything in your hand except for water. Cheers us with your sandwiches. We do that too.
Oh, that
That's
sounds
great.
delicious.
Yeah.
Do it. Cheers.
Cheers.
Thank you, whiskey.
So now that we're moving into the paranormal portion of the show, are you ready for my reveal?
Yes.
Yes, I'm very excited that I'm not the one that's doing the reveal this week.
I resurrected something.
What?
I brought something back to life.
Okay, yeah, I do understand that that's what resurrection means.
Something that may be from the dark days.
Okay.
Today, I want to talk to you about the very first paranormal story that we ever tried to record the show that was lost. Today, we're going to talk about Chillingham Castle.
Yay, okay.
Yeah, I'm really excited about it. So, Chillingham Castle is widely regarded as one of the most haunted places in England, and it has definitely earned its reputation. Hundreds of paranormal occurrences are reported to have happened there to guests, tourists, and residents over the course of its history. Mm-hmm. And the castle is still incredibly active to this day. Chillingham Castle is located in Northumberland, which boasts some of the finest castles in all of England. Mm-hmm. Although Chillingham may be the most eccentric.
Okay.
For around 30 years now, the castle has belonged to... Are you ready for a great name?
Yes.
The castle has belonged to Sir Humphrey Wakefield.
That's a good name.
And his wife, Catherine. But long before that, since its construction in the 13th century, Chillingham had belonged to the Grey family and all of their descendants, the Earls of Tankerville.
Okay.
So because of the escalating costs of running the castle, Chillingham was abandoned in 1932 and its contents were sold off. Mm-hmm. After that, the building began to fall into decay. So the roofs were caving in, the gardens were completely overgrown, and the lakes on the property had become filled with silt. So Sir Humphrey purchased the castle and the lands from the Tankervilles around 50 years after it was abandoned. Both parties were delighted by the sale because Sir Humphrey's wife, Catherine, who would now live on the land with him, is a direct descendant of the family that had originally established the castle. So in a lot of ways, it was like she was coming home to her ancestry.
Yeah, that's really cool.
In its day, Chillingham served as the first line of defense in preventing the Scots from invading England, and the castle was ruled over by King Edward I, who historically is also affectionately called Longshanks. So in order to describe all of the terrible things that happened at Chillingham, I'll be talking a lot about specific rooms in the castle to try to illustrate for you. I think the most important place to start is the dungeon.
Right.
So the dungeon is a very small room with markings that are still scratched into the mortar from where prisoners were held and kept count of how many days they had left to live. So it's a scar on the face of the property that was never renovated over. It was never taken out.
Which, good for them, too.
I agree.
Yeah, don't wash over history just because it's not
And
favorable.
it's a rich part of the history.
Yeah.
But the prisoners, they could expect to have their arms and legs broken before being thrown 20 feet down a hole into the oubliette and left there to die.
Great.
Either from starvation or from their injuries.
Awesome. Yeah, perfect. So
Which-
we're back to sad.
Right? And can we just talk about what a terrible way to go?
Right.
By the way, the word oubliette comes from the French word oublier, which means to forget. Because what do we do when we throw somebody down into the oubliette? We dispose of them and forget about them.
Right.
While stuck in the oubliette, prisoners who survived the impact would often start to eat chunks of flesh from others that they found down there, whether they were alive and could not fend them off, or would start to eat corpses of people that were thrown down there.
Right. We just talked. Humanity has a survival instinct.
Yeah, I mean, you do what you need to do to survive, although 20 feet down into a pit with no exit, you're not getting out, but you do what you need to do.
Right.
The other thing that's real fucked up about that situation, though, is sometimes they would eat their own flesh.
Right.
They would literally try to eat themselves to stay alive. It would all just be a vain attempt to try to prolong their life, and they would always die. It has been reported that if you look down through the grate covering the oubliette, you can see the remains of a young girl looking back up at you. This apparition is believed to be the remains of the last person who had died there.
So obviously they're not there. They're just appearing to be there when you look down.
Correct. People report seeing orbs with both their naked eye and in photographs in the dungeon and near the oubliette.
Awesome.
Which orbs with your naked eye, to me, registers as kind of a big deal because orbs typically are only seen by most people in photographs.
Right, especially vortexes and orbs and anything like that. A lot of people think it's a refractory of light off of a dust particulate.
And as a photo major, I can definitely say that there is a difference. It's also reported that there is an overwhelming heaviness and depression that sets in upon visitors when they visit the dungeon. I don't really expect that any prisoners were having a great time there.
Right. Also, I mean, if you know the history of a place, there is a sympathetic reaction, no matter what.
So in the torture chamber, the floor in this room was purposely constructed to be on a slope.
Right, so they can get rid of the blood.
That's right. This was so all of the blood that would accumulate on the floor would pool over to one side and drain out of the room. The torture chamber, by the way, is equipped with several lovely amenities.
Perfect.
Such as, we have a boiling pot that's large enough to fit an adult male.
Okay.
We have multiple different instruments for gouging eyes out.
Okay.
We have barrels full of spikes that were used to roll over tied up prisoners until the flesh was either ripped from their body or they simply died an agonizing death from blood loss. There are cages that would have been attached to a prisoner's stomach, into
The
which
rats.
a starved rat would have been placed inside of. And then the only way out of that cage would be for the rat to eat his or her way through the prisoner.
Right, especially if they would light a candle flame.
Put it
on the
underneath
upper
it.
parts. Mhm.
And then the panic sets in and survival instinct.
Correct. It's like I remember that from when I was 10 and I went to the London dungeon.
Yes.
Good visuals when you're a child.
That's what childhood and dreams are made of. The main man in charge of all of this top-notch torture was a fellow named John Sage. He was a real classy kind of guy. John Sage was formerly one of King Edward I's best and deadliest warriors on the battlefield. He had worked his way up to the rank of lieutenant, before incurring a serious leg injury that would prevent him from participating on the battlefield.
Right, but then you had to place him somewhere.
Precisely. John Sage was so bummed about not being able to kill people for funsies that his good buddy King Edward I was like, hey, have you considered a career in torture?